Hi, guys. Dan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Double Shot of Steelers presented by FanDuel. I just came back from covering the Penguins' first appearance in a while. They had an on-ice session for their prospects, and a lot of the veterans were doing a volunteer thing on the other rink. So lots of stuff you can check out our app, you hockey fans, to see what I've got on that subject. Meanwhile, Chris Halleck was over on the south side covering the football team with some amount of news, and that's usually the case on Thursdays because both of the coordinators will speak, and it's the only time that they'll formally speak, both Arthur Smith and Teryl Austin. And because Austin didn't exactly have himself a great game Sunday in East Rutherford, New Jersey, that might have been seen as something that could have been of some interest. He's not exactly a human quote machine, but he had an opportunity to say, hey, we're not very good. We're, we have a lot of work to do. I'm really disappointed in this, that, or whatever. He also could have fallen on his sword to an extent and said, I'm responsible for this because I was the one that sent them out there not being very aggressive, even though that's what we had aimed to be all summer long. I thought that actually right there would have been the most realistic thing to come of this. And instead, he really didn't get much of anything done. Here's a sampling of TA today in his session.
No, it was not the same thing. I did not feel, I thought it was different. It wasn't that. It was just some things where I didn't think we got knocked around. I just thought we missed some opportunities. And so I didn't feel that way. I know how I felt coming off that field at Baltimore last year, and I didn't feel the same way this year. I feel good with our group. I feel good that they'll rebound, and we'll play better moving forward.
So, yeah. I mean, there's nothing there. Now, listen, he doesn't have anything to gain, and the Steelers don't have anything to gain from saying, you know what, this Sunday against the Seahawks, we're going to come out super crazy aggressive, and we're going to show them, and we're going to blitz every other snap. That's giving away your strategy. At the same time, give some indication. Do what Aaron Rodgers did yesterday. He took one. He took two actually for Broderick Jones. He accepted blame for two of the three sacks that Brod gave up. He didn't have to do that. There's a chance somewhere that somebody's believing him and thinking, man, yeah, this Rodgers, he really stinks. He had a bad game. Those sacks were his fault. He still did it. You can't be this guy. You can't. There isn't a match here between these personalities that are on this defense, these players, and what you just heard. Never mind what you just saw Sunday in East Rutherford. And I know. It's actually Mike Tomlin's defense. Why are we even talking about TA and everything? That's also part of the problem. Nothing at all came of this. I'm sure that's great for him. Not necessarily great for the Steelers. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Chris to talk about this.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Welcome back to the show, joined as promised by Chris. I mean, TA carries himself a certain way. I get it. And he's not going to go outside himself. At the same time, he has to recognize I mean, he has to recognize, and you know why, that he messed up.
Yeah, so I think he's going to do that, and I think he has done that, but I don't think he's necessarily going to do that. Coaches tend to not do that
No, they don't.
in that way. Yeah, they don't. But try to read the tea leaves a little bit, and you don't even have to read you don't even have to be like a master tea leaf reader, whatever that job is called. To really kind of see, because there have been multiple times, including today with Teryl Austin himself, in which Austin and Mike Tomlin have actually come out and said, we need, like I think the way Tomlin put it was, we need to put these guys in better position to make plays. Like that admission alone is a coach pretty much saying, we screwed up in a certain way. Now, is that going in the same direction as like, what Aaron Rodgers did, saying, yeah, I ran into a couple sacks, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. But it's still something in which they admit it. And if they had even admit it by a shred publicly, that it's been diagnosed behind the scenes.
Okay. But, there is some value in connecting with your community around you. There really is. If you, as a coordinator / head coach, being the de facto coordinator, whatever it happens to be, know you screwed up and you've got your home opener coming up this week, take some of the heat off of those guys. What if they're the ones who are getting introduced? I get it. It's the opener. Everybody's going to do their thing. They're coming through the tunnel, and it's awesome. But what if they see Patrick Queen coming out and they're thinking, yeah, that guy's not all that good? One of the reasons, in fact, the main reason that you think he's not all that good is because they defanged the whole defense for 2 quarters and change.
Yeah, to a certain extent, but at the same time, if you actually look at the blitz rate, they actually had the 4th highest blitz rate in the NFL in week 1. So that's at least encouraging from that perspective. The problem there, and this is, I think I mentioned this, on the show earlier this week, that I think at some point you also have to tip your hat to the opposition, because I don't know how many times it looked like the Steelers were about to get Justin Fields for a sack, and he just got out of there, because he's a really athletic guy. He's got, phenomenal legs and, the ability to use them to create and run and do a number of things with them. At the same time, there's a way to be a little bit more aggressive on the run side of things. Yes, sometimes that's run blitzing, but it's also not just being aggressive for being aggressive sake. It's how you are aggressive. It's when you are aggressive. And I think that's where they swung and missed. Like you mentioned, for the first couple of, for the first, quarter, 2.5 quarters of the game. And when they finally started to have those adjustments, then you started to actually see, okay, this is probably what they should have been doing all along. But I think the one thing we need to keep contextualize here is we're putting this in the same context as the 299 game, and it's not the same team. It's not, and they didn't get beat the same way either. Yeah, that was one thing Teryl Austin said in that clip.
Yeah, he did, but he still, I mean, he was a big part of the problem in Baltimore, and he was a big part of the problem in East Rutherford. So one could make the argument from there that sure, they got beat the same way because the coordinator got beat the same way. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like I don't mean to sound surprised by this. As you said, and we agree, coaches don't like to do this. They feel that it shows weakness to the athletes, even if they do it in a press conference setting, so that the athletes are going to go, wow, did you hear the coach said that he really blew it?
Yeah.
And they don't see that as advantageous to their jobs. But I thought this was such an occasion. I thought this was pretty obvious stuff. You mentioned the blitz. There's a difference between blitzing and going after the quarterback and trying to contain the quarterback and the old standard run blitz. And I didn't see nearly enough of that. I saw Patrick Queen hanging back and looking at open gaps. waiting for things to develop. And I don't think that was on PQ. And by the way, PQ doesn't think that was on PQ. And he shouldn't. And he shouldn't. This team, Sam says in order to blitz, they need to stop the run. Not if they run blitz.
Yeah.
Sell out to stop the run. That's a run blitz. There's all kinds of blitzes, Sam.
Yeah. No, you don't want to. You don't want to blitz every single down. You want to make sure that you're. I'm not, because then you leave yourself vulnerable. I mean, there's a reason why
against Justin Fields. There's an opponent there too. This was not. We keep talking about this challenge that they faced as if they were going against peak Joe Montana, where they were just going to get spliced apart, and it just that was not going to happen. Justin had himself a nice game, okay, but he's not that quarterback.
No, I know he's not that quarterback. But the one thing that blitzing does, when you're talking about especially blitzing the quarterback, is if you don't get home, he's going to do some damage. Because if you rush 5 guys and those 5 guys end up being behind the quarterback, you got 6 downfield that could possibly get, and they're usually spread out pretty far. So you're then going to allow Justin Fields to get a number of yards before somebody can get to him. Shoot, man, even the one run that he had that was a designed run for him that was over 10 yards, which was a zone read, and he kept it. He made the right read. TJ even kind of stayed to the outside and played the quarterback.
Yes.
So actually, no, he didn't make the right read. So no, that would be the wrong read, and he still just ran around him. And that's TJ Watt over there. It's not like that's some scrub. I mean, he just ran around him because he's just really fast. That's the reason why I think you didn't see. Now, again, still over 40%, almost 45% in terms of, like, again, pass blitzing for sure. That's a major uptick from last year. So I do think it's just, in my professional opinion, I thought it was more Justin Fields escaping, because if that's a different quarterback back there, and
they're getting to him.
They have about 4 sacks in that game, and then we're talking completely different about the defense's performance if they get 4 sacks instead of 1.
Yeah, there's and Michael Cross brings up here too that sometimes when TJ got to Justin, the ball was
not every time.
The ball was already out of there.
He got to Justin one time whenever Justin still had the ball, and he rocked him pretty darn good too. They had some hits.
He sure did. Yeah, and TJ actually played a good game. I'm hearing from people who are like, what about the sacks? It's just Justin's not a guy you're bringing down a lot. You should know that here in Pittsburgh. Anthony Curtelli says, please give Y.A. Black more reps, please. Those are on the way.
I do think so. Teryl Austin did talk about that today too. The way he put it was, he doesn't want to necessarily. They don't want to put too much on his plate at one time. They want to let him develop into his role, but like the playing type of development. And so I would not be surprised to see his snap count, or at least not necessarily like the number, but the percentage of the snaps that he plays to increase even just a little bit week in and week out. And especially if those in front of him, like for example, when Derek Harmon's out, if Isaiah Loudermilk continues to if he has another bad performance, if Keanu Benton has another bad performance, then you could begin to see more snaps from him. And I understand the whole obsession with him. Like, he should be the nose tackle. He's going to play nose. He's also going to play defensive end too. They like his ability to play close to the ball, over the ball as a nose tackle, because of just how large he is and the fact that he's really, really difficult to move, especially when he gets his pad level right. If anything, he's probably impossible to move when he has his pad level right. But then he's also got 35-inch arms, which they want to be able to use that on the edge too, because that kind of length on the edge is going to win some reps against offensive tackles. So they like his blend of size and length and athleticism, even though he didn't test that great athletic, in terms of athletic scores. They like what he can do in a number of roles, and they're going to continue to play him in that way. And as a rookie, that's a great way to find out what exactly you have.
There are people suggesting different formations and different people at different spots.
Yeah, that one's the big one right now.
It's if you put Y.A. Black at the nose or whatever passes for the nose in 2025, you move Benton to the end. One of the things that everybody should be reminded of on a regular basis is that on the current roster, there are not one, but two defensive linemen who were drafted to play positions that don't really exist in this defense. Like when you go and you get Keanu Benton, and everyone said this is a nose tackle, nose tackle, nose tackle, nose tackle. Well, he comes to Pittsburgh and they treat him like he's a nose tackle from 10 years ago. And what do you know? He gets thrown around. He gets moved, and sometimes worse than moved. You also have DeMarvin Leal. I still don't think anybody understood at the time why they were drafting him. That's not even a knock on the kid. He's just he didn't fit this defense from day one. Maybe they thought they were going to do one of those things that they've been able to pull off successfully in the past with Alex Highsmith, before that Lamar Woodley, where you take somebody and just say, well, they'll fit with the Steelers, you'll see, because they're just the right body type or just the right level of athleticism, dexterity, and all that other stuff. But you've got two guys on the current roster who don't fit their spots on the defensive line. And that's part of the issue here. Same thing goes, I could make an argument here for Isaiah Loudermilk, who obviously did not play well. Isaiah was drafted. In fact, you'll remember, even though he was a late rounder, there was a trade up to get him. Mm-hmm. And Kevin Colbert said at the table in that draft room, when you have an opportunity to get yourselves an Isaiah Loudermilk, you have to make that move. That was him. Now, that sounds like pretty strong language, right? They were so into his run-stopping ability. And yet, is he a fit for what it is that they do? I'm not saying he had a good game, believe me. I was there. In the most general sense, and he's still here. So let's not pretend that all of the necessary pieces are at hand for this team to stop the run. I don't want to lay everything on TA, is what I'm saying here. I don't want to lay everything on the scheme. Some of it is the individual player's performance, and they are, of course, responsible for that. You don't want to get ragdolled no matter what position or what role you're in. But some of it also is in this drafting and some of the people that are here where you just go, what? So
I asked TA today how the nose tackle position has evolved over the years, because I think, and I'm already seeing comments that are somewhat related to this, not specifically, but why not switch to a 4-3 front, or if you're going to, whatever, like it's kind of related to this. Because I think when people are thinking, okay, if you have a 3-4 defense, and the old school mentality is your nose tackle has to be Casey Hampton or Joel Steed. It's got to be that guy who just does nothing but take up space, take up blocks, so that that's not the NFL anymore. And that the answer that TA gave, and it makes a lot of sense, is that the use of 11 personnel, which is one running back, one tight end, and 3 wide receivers, has skyrocketed throughout just all of football, not just the NFL, but all of football. Sean McVay with the Rams, one of the great offensive minds, personally my favorite offensive mind in the game, uses 11 personnel like 90% of the time. Like that's his go. That's just what he operates out of almost exclusively. And a lot of offenses, not quite to that extreme, use a lot of 11 personnel. And when you have that and you still want to be able to play out of your base, or you can't play out of your base because you have to play out of nickel, you can't afford to have a guy taking up a roster spot who does absolutely nothing else but play a zero technique, lines up over the center, and that's it. and he's just there to eat up space. They have to be guys who are able to play multiple techniques, which is why they drafted a Keanu Benton, because he's a guy who can play over the nose, but he can slide a little further out and play like a 3 technique, which is between the guard and the tackle. And he can also provide some pass rush upside too, which anytime you can get that from a defensive lineman, you take it. Because if that just adds, like, look what Cam Hayward's able to do. The Steelers pass rush has been great for a long time until the last few years, because Cam Hayward was a big part of it. It wasn't just TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and all these guys and Bud Dupree. It was also because of the fact that Cam Hayward was a great pass rusher in his own right.
Yeah, and that's been what's attached to a lot of these picks that I'm describing as well. They're guys who make plays. They're guys who've gotten to the quarterback. Rare is the 300+ pounder who's getting back there. I don't want to. I mean, they do exist, but they're precious when they come along. So you look at Keanu and you think, oh yeah, well here's Stephon Tuitt. That's awesome. That's great. He's not that. You look at Derek Harmon, and they have never made. I've not heard anyone associated with the Steelers associate or compare him to Steph in any way. I think they're more careful than that, and that's smart than that. But some others have done that. You gotta. Steph was really. I still don't know that after the fact that he gets the credit for what kind of a special player this was. Maybe it's just because the Steelers were really lucky to be able to get him in the second round out of Notre Dame. But it's they need Harmon to be a really, really good player. Okay. I don't know if he's going to be Steph or whatever. Okay. And they need him to do some of the things that he had shown on his own college tape.
Yeah.
Because he's impressive and he does get back there. And even the play in which he got hurt, or was it that was the play after? The last play of his game in the preseason, he was almost at the quarterback and he was getting shoved out. This was the game in Charlotte, the preseason game. Mm-hmm. And you see that he's aggressive, he's pursuing. Even that's not what the Steelers need. We can talk about nose tackle or whatever, passes for nose tackle, to repeat myself.
Yeah.
And we can talk about left tackle. And the conversations that we'll have with both of those, I think, should be the most boring possible things. Just give me somebody who can just do the job. I don't need you to get splash. I don't need you to make some sort of pancaking highlights or anything like that. Just get the job done. Be dull. Be somebody whose name we never mentioned. That to me is a big, big part. The biggest next step that this football team has to make.
Well, and somebody quickly after I had explained, what TA said, asked, how often were the Jets in 11 personnel? And I didn't look at the percentages, but just from my own rewatching the game and everything, probably not very, very much. They were probably in 12 personnel quite a bit. And this is when, again, the league is all about trends, and they change quite a bit. We like to think of the NFL as this quarterback driven, and it's always going to be a quarterback driven league because you have to have, the numbers just dictate you have to have a great quarterback if you're going to have a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl, either that or an all-time great defense. But there's a misconception that it's a passing league, and it is not the passing league it used to be. We are seeing a transition back to larger offenses, to more tight end usage, to more two-back usage. Kyle Shanahan, listen, the guys who kind of engineered and made popular the whole wide zone system that Arthur Smith uses were the likes of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and all those guys. They've, in recent years, switched to more gap schemes. Kyle Shanahan's going more counter and power, and Sean McVay is going more duo. That's just the way that they run the football now. That's more of their bread and butter now, and they've done that because, throughout when wide zone was attacking defenses and shredding those, then defenses started getting faster and smaller and started having to be able to be stretched out horizontally. So now those offensive minds are thinking, now we can attack downhill, staying between the tackles. And so now you're starting to see offenses get a little larger. So then you have to start thinking on the defensive side, are we going to start going back to start valuing more the defensive tackles that do a lot of stuff that does not get any kind of praise in the box score?
Dwight Jefferson, who often brings up really good points here, says, seems like Benton with his wrestling background would understand leverage and be able to use his strength better. Keanu, as a rookie, was flooring some of his teammates, and by this I mean metaphorically, in exactly that, what you're describing, Dwight. He was creating chaos. He was using upper body strength and, like you say, leverage, and he was moving guys, and he was making mayhem. And then he wasn't. And I'm not going to sit here and pick apart why it's happening or why it wasn't happening. But I do know this. The one constant through all of that is that he's never been a true nose tackle. He's never been that guy to do what it was that the Steelers wanted him or needed him to do Sunday in East Rutherford. And the other Jets totally got this. That game plan that Aaron Glenn oversaw and approved was aimed at picking on him. I could not be convinced otherwise. They wanted to go at him in some form or other, whether it was to his left or to his right, even to Cam's side. And they wanted to neutralize him, and they apparently didn't see it as being any great challenge. And they got away with it. They got away with it.
To kind of answer Dwight's question too, understanding leverage in wrestling is a little bit different than understanding it in football. While it can certainly help, and there are some things that translate between the two sports, which is why a lot of football coaches really like wrestlers for their linemen, but on both sides of the ball. I mean, Zach Frazier was a decorated wrestling champion. I think 4 times he won a state championship as a wrestler. But there is still certain hand usage and pad level and a number of different football jargon, for lack of a better word, that Keanu is still learning. And when you watch the technique difference between a Cam Hayward and a Keanu Benton, just in terms of how they take on a block, it's different. And it's not that Keanu's not a small guy. I have it on very good authority. He weighs over 300 pounds. So I think he's listed at under that. And if he is, then it's incorrect. So he's of good size. He's a good athlete, but he's got to learn he's got to continue to develop that proper technique, and then mix that with the kind of mean streak that he's had even as a wrestler.
Flipping to the other side of the football here, Mike says, DK, I know you and Chris were saying that Kenny Gainwell was going to have a part to play in this offense, which we did only all the time from Latrobe, that it was clear from the way he was being utilized in drills and reps and everything else that even though they were protecting Jaylen Warren, that Gainwell was going to have a real role, and that maybe Caleb Johnson wasn't going to be having as big a role as would have been thought at the time that he was drafted. Well, both of those things have come to play. But Mike says, did you expect this? If you're asking, did I expect him to have more snaps than Jaylen in the opener? Good God, no. With Jaylen being healthy? With Jaylen being available? No. Not in any capacity, least of all when it comes to blocking. Gainwell's good at it. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not knocking him. Jaylen's elite when it comes to run blocking for a running back. And you're already having trouble with your left tackle. You've got to find ways to fortify. You can't have, as a coach, the player that you want, the player that you wish you had, whether that's singular or plural. You have to coach to what it is that you actually have. Well, what they actually have at left tackle is a problem, and you can't pretend otherwise.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that, but I would also just urge people to kind of not overreact to what you saw in week 1 in terms of trends and distribution of reps and etc. It's one game. If we were to do that based off of last season's opener, against the Falcons, the Steelers were never, ever, ever going to do anything in terms of ever even thinking about throwing the ball to the middle of the field, because they purposely avoided it to avoid the safety tandem that the Falcons had. Now, that being said, Russell Wilson still didn't throw to the middle of the field very often.
They reached that in week 7, yes.
Yeah, but at the same time, Russell Wilson wasn't playing in that game. And even then, there were still the occasional throws in which Russ did actually throw to the middle of the field. So, but when they played Atlanta, they did not at all. There wasn't even an attempt there. And that was part of the game plan to beat the Falcons. So let's not just assume that by season's end, Kenneth Gainwell is going to have more snaps than Jaylen Warren. If that is the case and injury doesn't play a role in that, I will be very, very surprised. I don't think that that's what they plan to do, but if it is, it's a head scratcher to me.
Staying on the offensive side, William says, hey, DK and Chris, should the Steelers have extended Calvin Austin this offseason? If he keeps up at this rate, he's going to cost more than he would have this past offseason. To me, the answer to this question, William, is it doesn't matter. They're sitting on so much cap space. They can sign Cal when they want to. And if Cal wants to, or gets advice from his agent that he should, go test the waters and hit the open market and everything, I mean, he's certainly free to do that and freer to do that when he gets closer to free agency than he would have been this past offseason making some kind of stand. So did they blow it? No. If they want to sign Cal, they'll sign Cal.
Yeah, and plus, it's hindsight's a funny thing, because we can be on the other side of a great week 1 performance and be like, wow, the Steelers really should have thought about extending Cal. But before the game, you're kind of, shoot, we're talking how many times on this show did we talk about the need for a WR2 on this roster? And if by season's end, Calvin Austin proves to be that guy, we can't play both.
You pay him, yeah. Easy. You pay him compared to what you were going to give, Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is, like, you didn't think he was that guy before the season. Nobody did. Or if you did, then kudos to you, because you were one of the few. A lot of people thought he was a really solid number 3 or a good number 3. I saw WR4 next to him quite a bit, but there are a lot of people that were still up in arms about the Steelers not having a WR2. And so let's also remember that hindsight changes perspective very, very easily.
Doubleback says that Broderick Jones has terrible fundamentals for a player who's played the position as long as he has. Who's teaching him? The answer to that question is yes, meaning there's any number of people who are both offering advice, offering instruction, offering orders, like outright orders. This is the way we need you to do this. He has to take it into a game. He has to carry it onto the field on a Sunday. That's on the player. We had somebody here earlier in our live chat from Facebook. This live chat of ours draws from all different kinds of social media. From Facebook, who was in all capital letters freaking out. Quit picking on Broderick. Quit picking on Broderick. This is all about Pat Meyer. Everything's about Pat Meyer. Like 3 all uppercase comments later, the same guy's saying on a separate subject, it's about the players. The players need to play. The players need to get the job done. So it's like, you can't have it both ways. You also can't have it both ways and say that Meyer is the one who's principally responsible for Jones, when Meyer is also overseeing 4 other starting offensive linemen who are drawing no complaints from anybody, and 3 of whom are young. Zach Frazier's still young, beginning of 2nd year. Mason McCormick was the Steelers' highest graded offensive lineman. He was a 4th round pick last year
out of South Dakota State.
I have no idea what significance that carries, but I'm going to assume that's not a great football school.
It's not a Power 4 school, I'll put it that way.
Okay, South Dakota State, but 4th round pick. Nobody's complaining about that. Troy Fautanu played in his second NFL game ever this week. Wasn't perfect. Wasn't a model. Has room for improvement. He told me the same thing after that game. But nobody's saying fire the coach over him. So what are we doing here? You know, it can't be. You can't have it both ways. You can't just cherry pick when it is that you want to use a certain phrase.
It's a trend that people cling to. I don't know if it's just to use a Mike Tomlin phrase that we've used a couple of times, where they're just seeking comfort and finding something to cling on to as this is the reason why Broderick Jones is failing, when it just might be the player. The player doesn't pan out. And maybe, just maybe, there's also other variables to this. Maybe Broderick has it within him, and Pat Meyer himself just doesn't have it. Doesn't mesh. It doesn't work. The way Pat Meyer teaches doesn't work for Broderick, but he might go somewhere else where another offensive line coach puts things in a certain way that Broderick gets it, and then he develops. It's just that's why you never bat 1,000, because that same offensive line coach may work with a guy like Broderick, but might not work with another guy like a Mason McCormick or a Troy Faltano or whoever else.
Randy Wagner brings up a question here. We're only going to take a couple more today that surprise hadn't come up until now, all week on the program. Asks, what area does Caleb Johnson need to show the coaching staff in practice to earn game reps? And let's have a division here between game reps on returns and game reps as a running back.
Yeah.
Johnson had 1 carry for -2 yards. Every once in a while, Chris, I'm not sure what there is to this, if anything, because we're talking about really small sample sizes for this young man. Every once in a while, he just gets clocked. Like he gets,
returns, yeah.
You know what you were talking about? Like, no, but it happened in Latrobe too on running plays where you just go, geez, did you not see that guy coming? I mean, he was a freight train. He was tooting the horn and everything, and you still couldn't move out of his way.
Yeah, I'm a bit curious about that too, and see if that gets any better. But in terms of the offensive side, the easy answer with Caleb Johnson is he has to improve it in pass protection. Otherwise, he doesn't stand a chance to see the field on 3rd down unless it's 3rd and 1, and they're definitely running the ball, or at least trying to make it look like they're going to run the ball because he's their biggest running back. The other way is just prove that he is comfortable enough with the offense to be able to go out there and play without thinking, which that's really hard for some rookies to do. Okay. And especially when Caleb Johnson went out there for his first preseason game and was very, very open and public about how much he said he was thinking and how much he was having to pay attention to detail and how he was just out playing. Like he was focused on details and everything. Like, until that becomes more natural for him, he's going to struggle, period. Like if you're out there and you're not confident in your ability to go execute a play where you're like, hey, no matter what, we're running, 19 wide zone here. And the defense comes out in this particular front. So I know exactly where if you're trying to sit there and you're playing those mind games in your head, you're not going to struggle. But if you go out there and you just kind of know, okay, here's the call. Okay, I'm here. I'm looking at what the defense is doing. All right, I already know what's going on. I already know. Just run. There's a big difference between what I described first and what I just described then. And that's usually the big difference between year 1 and year 2. And that also might be one of the differences why a guy like Caleb Johnson went from being, a possible 2nd round pick to going all the way down to 83rd overall. So I don't know, man. Like he's got some stuff to prove, and I think some of it is actually between the ears. But that's not out of the ordinary for a rookie. Sorry.
No, that's not even necessarily like an insult or anything.
No,
it's just,
that's why I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, you're not operating with the same motor, the same processes as somebody who's been through it and who's lived it.
Right.
Michael gets our last question for the day. Obligatory Roman Wilson question. Asks if Roman ever been on the field, or have injuries kept him off? He's been on an NFL field, if that's what you're asking. He was on an NFL field. in this game. But wow, how do I say this without enraging Roman Nation here?
Oh boy.
Well, look at all of the targets that Aaron Rodgers hit. Okay, count the people that he threw the ball to. And you're talking about DK Metcalf, you're talking about Calvin Austin. They had 4 catches each. All of the tight ends, well, Darnell Washington wasn't targeted, but Jonnu Smith had 5. Pat Freiermuth had 3. He's utilizing a lot of different weapons, and we didn't even mention he didn't throw to Darnell. We didn't even mention the running backs. Where are you working Roman into this? Like, where did anybody think he was going to? Is it because we thought that that Cal was going to open up on IR or something because he missed some of training camp? I'm not sure. Me and Chris do not see eye to eye on this subject, on the Roman subject. He really thinks there's something there. Okay.
Well, I think the team sees more there. I'm still more on. I'm still a little bit more skeptical, but I understand. I can see things that he does in practice every now and then. I'm like, oh, that's why. But it's not consistent, and that's where you have to, that's going to be the difference maker right now between him and Scotty Miller. Yeah,
Scotty Miller or somebody like that. But Scotty Miller wasn't.
I mean,
so Ben Skoranek ran a really, really good, smart route. And
busted coverage helps too.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Did he drop the ball?
Nope. He caught the ball. Yeah. But in terms of total offensive snap counts, Ben Skoranek and Roman Wilson both had 10, which was 18% of the offensive snaps, and Scotty Miller had 9, which was 16%. So those were your WR 3, 4, 5. And so they're pretty much all right, even with each other. So, and then Calvin Austin was up at 45 snaps, which was 80%. So if you wonder who WR2 is, there's your answer.
The Roman Empire is what they're going to be calling themselves, according to Cody. I love that. Cody, by the way, make sure you get to the app today because I got some hockey stuff for you, bud. He's our resident big hockey fan. Some stuff that I ran by a certain somebody very high up in the Penguins organization. That was a Cody theory. So we love Cody in our hockey community, but he knows a little bit of all sports. If you want to become a member of our community on DK Pittsburgh Sports, on that app, not on any other social device or platform or YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else that you're seeing the show, on our app, you can download our app onto your Apple device by going to dkps.net/Apple. You can do it on Android by going to dkps.net/Android. Lowercase the A, by the way, on those when you do that. I don't know why, but they're case sensitive. It's just a lowercase Apple, lowercase Android when you do that. After that, send me an email. I'll be sitting right here because I got done with all my hockey stuff so that Cody has something to read tonight. I'll be sitting right in that chair answering your emails. It's exactly what I'm going to be doing. You'll be surprised how quickly I can do it. Chris won't be. He's seen me.
I've seen it.
I'm a fast email answerer. And when you do ask me for this massive discount on the premium version of the app, the other one has ads and stuff. You don't want to deal with any of that. And you can't comment. You can't be part of our community. That's no fun. Then you can't get to see what Cody has to offer. So, yeah, do that. Do that now. Tomorrow is the Steelers' last practice before the home opener. And man, we haven't talked about the Seahawks at all.
That's tomorrow's show.
We can do that as tomorrow's show. Did you see we got the helmet in today?
I did. I see that. It looks like it's a matte.
Forgot.
It looks like
it's totally forgot. Isn't it nice?
It looks like a matte finish.
The city of Seattle came so close to being the second city that had all the teams with the same colors because the Mariners and the Seahawks wear the same and whatever else here. And then along came the Kraken and blew it with whatever that weirdo turquoise design is. And they're supposed to be getting an NBA team or getting the Sonics back in some form real soon. Not ready to count the Sounders. That's Major League Soccer. But one way or another, they don't all have the same colors. There's only one city that does. One city in the whole world where all the teams have the same first name and the same colors. That would be your Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Guys, we're gonna do another one of these shows tomorrow, and hope to see you then.